And hello again. Let's continue our exploration. This time I'll start with a black background. And let's go and explore once again the particle modeler under the animated category of filters. Particle modeler, and we will create an animation. Let's say about 88 frames this time. And we'll play it at 30 frames a second, but of course that can always be changed. Alright, so here we go into the particle modeler. Let's move it up a little bit so we see the bottom of it too, actually even a little bit more. I'm not capturing the whole screen here. So let's see, modeling side. One thing I want to do is create a very simple shape, maybe just a sphere. There you go. And reshape it a little bit. So we have some move, scale, and rotate options here. So the move, you get to move this thing around. Scale. Now, relative to where you scale is, it's a function of where you start. As you click and drag, let's say in the middle here, it scales it sideways, left and right. Right. So if I click and drag and go up, and so you can do that also in the other views. And if you want to scale relative to this area, it will scale to the side here, relative to that. See that? You just click there and drag around and it reshapes it. So that's basically the scale function. There's a couple of other tools here to transform rotating these points. And notice you don't have to see it just as points. You can also show, where is it? There is a function to show something else. Deform. I forget where it is, but it's there somewhere. There, show size. So that shows the size of each cloud blob or element. And now here it's a relatively small sample, so it's still very interactive. Be careful, this may take a while. You have a lot of circles being shown and drawn there. So let's go turn that off. And let's say we create one more, perhaps another sphere. So this sphere will move it. Let's go to move and move it to the side, and then we'll create another one, and that will be just adding another sphere, and we'll move it, make sure we're still on the move it here to this side. We'll make it a little bit bigger. Now you noticed here it actually froze and turned this black, the first cloud. The second one is still active, but the first one has been kind of conditioned into this pre-render stage. Now I can do and get render the whole thing. So now I have this one smaller cloud here on the right side and this bigger blobby cloud here. Now the whole thing is basically frozen and you can unfreeze it, but it's now one cloud pattern. So when you move it, it's no longer individual clouds, it's the whole cloud together. There's also the ability to, once you've selected that or unfrozen it, to do a few things like randomizing the points, and then also deform it where gravity kind of makes them attract each other and they kind of come closer. You can see the separation between this one and this one on the left, this one on the right. It's kind of gradually fading. So let me go do that again. If I unfreeze and then deform a few times, well, not really a whole lot, but it takes a while, but gradually you'll see these kind of come together. And if you then click here to get ready to render, it seems like they've come closer. You can also rotate this. You can also, you know what, let's just start with this. Okay, so this will be our cloud, and let's move on to the animate section. Click here, animate. And with the left button, by default initially will be in a transform state right here, and you get to move the cloud or edit the cloud. You can also move the camera or edit the camera, right? So in both cases, if you move the cloud, you move sideways or into the scene, at least at this particular juncture, at this particular version. This may change over time. We are still experimenting with what feels more natural. It might stay that way. You can also change, let's see, the cloud. What else can we change here? Oh yeah, let's go and set the keyframe. So first position will go in keyframe. So one thing I want to do in this tutorial is explore some of the some of the capabilities that you have through these options on the left side. Right, so I'm gonna go and do a secondary motion study here, and then later we'll do a displacement field and just alive. So secondary motion, whoops, there it is, it's gone. So I guess I need to see if I can bring this back without secondary motion. There it is. Let's go keyframe that, and then bring it a little bit, rotating it over. And then bring it over here and rotating it upwards. And then let's bring it back, I don't know, give it a little bit of a twist. Little roll, something like this. So we have a bit of a sophisticated rotation sequence here. Alright, now let's see what happens if we add secondary motion and render that. You can tell that not everything is rotating at the same time. A little bit of a delay. And that's what this is doing. This is kind of an interesting side effect or special effect. It's rotating first on the inside. See here? When I go through the first couple of frames, you can see it's starting the rotation on the inside. Anything that's close to the center. And then the outer side, the outer parts are gradually following later on. So it creates a bit of an effect as if they were attached to some sort of a string and or spring wires. And when you play this at regular speed, it makes some nice secondary motion. That's what we call it. All right, let's go now and create again let's create a new image here, and this time let's go. We'll experiment with the other options. That was secondary motion. Let's create another one. This time we'll do animated particle modeler. Let's create a slightly different. Let's say still 88 frames and still 30 frames a second. And this time we'll create. You know what? Let's do a sphere over here. Let's do another sphere over here. Let's bring it down a little bit. Let's scale it up. So that will be, there it is, scale. Bring it something like this and move it in so it overlaps a little bit. There. We need to scale it there too. So we really want to make this into sort of a disk. And move it there. Alright, and then we can prepare to render. Here is our two sets of clouds come together. Let's do a little bit of unfreeze and deform 2 or 3 times, randomize. Check this. Okay, that's good enough. So now what we'll do is go back into animate, and this time what I want to do is this option, this displacement field. Alright, so we'll do something similar in the initial animation. We'll say, let's go to wait, I need to change the size here so I can see the bottom scroll bar. There you go. Let's go to the first. Oh, we still have the animation that was there the first time, so I guess we need to kill all that. Let's see if we have an option to delete all clear keys. There you go. That will clear all the keyframes. Okay, so the first frame we want to keyframe right here. Let's click add right there, and then we go to a little bit. Let's bring it closer and rotate it, something like so, and keyframe that. Then we rotate it up and keyframe that. Then we rotate it. Now let's see if we can kind of do a spin here. Keyframe one there. And you might wonder what's this noise. Never mind. Let's go and bring it back a little bit. Let's go there. Don't fly into it. Something like this. Keyframe that. So once again, we have a nice little sequence of rotations. And this time, we will do the displacement field and observe what that does. Let's go render. Okay, that rendering is done. Let's go and play it and see if we can tell anything going on here. It's a little bit fast. It moves a bit fast to tell, but you can tell there are some parts that are not moving all in sync. So there's a little bit of a displacement happening. And that's basically it. I'm going to leave it with that right now. I just want to start exploring these, and explaining comes later if it's not obvious. So one more I want to do is the motion, just moving, just alive. So let's go and create an empty. Let's go back to filter, animated, particle modeler. And sure enough, we want to create an animation of 30 frames, and once again with 88 frames total. There it is. Let's go give ourselves something like adding a sphere, put it there, add another sphere, put it there, put another one here, put it there. This one will, actually this time we'll do 3 spheres, and I think we need to simply have all these merged together. There you go. Now this time perhaps we'll also add a little bit something like this here. We'll go add a little bit on the light. Let's get light number 1, and then light number 2, and we can also move or rotate the light sources. So if you draw inside, if you move inside of the view, it will change the orientation of the light sources. You can choose to move that on light number 1. You can choose to select light number 2, and then that's the one affected. Or you can choose to move the cloud, select the cloud, and that will make the rotation affect the cloud orientation. And of course we have also a few other things like the brightness, the ambient, and the self shadow, the amount of self shadow. So I'm gonna grab something like this here, and now go animate once again, and this time we will animate with the just alive. So this time I will have the same rotation as before. No, actually we're flying too close here, so I'm going to go right here. And let's see, a little bit closer. No, that's good. That's good. We can use that. And what we will do is simply say just alive. Now, this one is actually interesting when things are not even rotating. But let's see just this one time, what happens if we let it rotate. What actually the just alive mode does is that the particles are, you know, just alive. They're moving, they're wiggling on their own, while the whole cloud is also being animated. Right? So it's essentially sort of a combination. And if, of course, if the animation is moving fast like this, you're not going to notice much of the individual motion on the clouds. So what I really ought to do is actually let the cloud be static, and then just see what sort of slight movement, kind of a Brownian movement, randomized movement, the cloud elements can sustain. So this will be the last one for this little demo. For this tutorial, I'm going to go once again, create a new image, and this time we will say, where is it? Filter, animated, particle modeler. Yes, we do want, once again, something like 88 frames. And I'm going to once again make this a little bit smaller so it all fits in our capture. And there we go. Alright, so this time I will create actually a little bit different type of shape. Let's say we have, we need to set the size here for airbrushing. And in fact, since this is version 9.5, I'm going to go like this. Go 0.9, 0.5. Okay. And so we have our numbers here in clouds. And what I'd like to do is see what happens if I simply animate that. So let's go to animate, and let's give ourselves a nice orientation. This is not the right one, we see it from the side here. So let's go, empty the keyframes so we are not animated. Let's make sure, yeah, as we scrub through that, it still stays the same orientation. Let's go to the rotation mode. There it is in the upper right corner, and rotate that to the other way there, 9.5. Okay, we could do without the grid. There you go, and simply enable the just alive. Maybe we will want to do a little bit of movement, just like softly zooming in. So let's do that. Let's go starting with this keyframe, first keyframe here, and then we'll go to the very last keyframe and simply move a little bit into the scene. Let's see if I can bring it closer and just make it a little bit bigger, just very slowly. That's already too much. Something like this will be just fine. And we might even do a tiny little bit of rotation to that, like a tilt. Yeah. Alright, so let's keyframe that. So we really have a very soft movement here where the cloud is just gradually coming towards us. And yet right now you see the particles are pretty static. The cloud system is pretty static. And what we want to do is give it a little bit of life. Alright, so we'll turn it just alive and render that. This one takes a little bit longer because the cloud system is a little bit denser and a bit more sophisticated. And it may be very subtle, but the particles are going to be moving a little bit if I got this set up right. So as you can see, the speed at which it renders will of course vary, well, certainly by the type of computer you have. Graphics card, I think there is some amount of this activity rendered on the GPU, but it also will depend of course on how dense or how complex your clouds are. So be prepared there to take a coffee break. No, maybe not that long, but it will be an interesting thing to try and experiment with. You do see the grid, the black grid lines here on the render in the superimposed. It's not actually rendering that grid on the final image sequence, on the final video, but it's there to serve as a reference framework. So pretty soon we will have this animation completed, and I'll just pause this until we're ready. And we are back with just a few more frames to render. And it still looks like the number 9.5. It's very subtle, though it has evolved. And what I'm going to do now is go to the rendered animation that this has produced. Of course, if you stay on one, you may not see much movement, but let's see if we play it. Aha! Sure, you can tell here, it looks like the clouds are kind of moving, like there's a little bit of wind tearing them apart or tugging at them, and that's exactly the intent with Just Alive, is to give it a little bit more something that makes it look a little bit alive, like there's some turbulence or there is some I don't know, some friction or something like that. So, where do we take it from here? Well, there's of course all sorts of other things you can do with it now. It's an animation of 88 frames. How about we make this an animation of about 3 or 4 times as many? We could, for instance, first of all, store it. Go to Store Animation, to Disk. Of course, if you have plenty of memory, you could also put it there. Here I'm going to, let's see, go to the animated filter category again and say motion prediction. I'm going to use the motion prediction module on a dry run first and say let's make it about 5 times slower, or add 5 tweens, And perhaps let's give it a fudge factor that's very low, and no need to scan for dropped frames. Go. So we're going to have 400 frames there. That means it's going to slow it down. It's going to make it much smoother. Alright, let's go. That was maybe a little bit too slow. You know what? I'm going to give it like 3. Let's do a dry run, no more. Let's go render that. And so now we will have a nice little animation that we can go and close. The last frame is always, the first frame is always a copy of the last one when we use the motion prediction module. And so here we go. Here we now have a nice little transitional animation with these clouds actually slightly changing shape. And you can tell, so if you zoom in, you know, if you zoom in while it's animating, you can see how these clouds are evolving and reshaping, and it's not all static. But there's a little bit of life, and that's what we did with that particular option, just alive. Alright, so let's see what else could we do here. Perhaps add a little bit of lens flares, or no, not lens flares, mystic vision. Let's go to that's a blur feature, I think. Let's go to blur, mystic vision, there it is, and add a lot of it, high quality, there you go, and perhaps move it too with the view here. So let's go something like this. Yeah, well, let's just render it like that, why not? And I just realized I did not save undo. That's a big no-no. If you're experimenting, you want to be able to undo. So, shame on me. I should definitely keep this checked. Sometimes I uncheck it if I want to do a much faster render and not waste any time on the saving of these undo. But then sometimes you'll regret it, and this is one example, right? You may not want to keep it that way. You will have to go back to the prior animation if you have one stored. And yes, we did. That's exactly why we did this thing here. When we went to animation, store animation to disk, right? That's what we did. You can restore it right there. So we're only a few clicks away from doing this all over again. Alright, so this time I'll do just one. I do like it relatively fast so we can actually see the movement, but it's a little bit too fast, so let's slow it down just a little bit. So I'm going to go with motion prediction module nonetheless. There it is. But this time just 2. And I'll leave it at default, what was it, 400 for the fudge factor, and go. So that will still be a little bit faster. We don't have that many new frames introduced. And this first frame we can delete, and now we do have a animation that looks smashing. Right, well, thanks for watching, and we'll have some more discussions on the different features and options that you can explore in the cloud or particle modeler to create some new clouds and lots of other fun stuff. Thanks for watching.